Transition, the process of change from one condition to another.
We are now at a new crossroad where change is evident once again.
What does not serve us must transform us anew.
Returning to our original state of oneness and true nature of that which created who we truly are.
Confusion was the way of the past. Enlightenment is the way of the now and future, shedding away the layers of deceit.
We now bring you the transformation of the two who started as one. Our fearless planet never stands still.
Earth has been in a process of transition, and we are not exempt from this remarkable, ongoing reality.
Welcome to Transition Radio.
Jerusalem. The year is roughly 30 AD. The city is a powder keg waiting for a spark. The streets are filled with zealots, beggars, priests, and soldiers. But high above the dust and the desperation in the cool marble halls of the palace, a different kind of game is being played.
The palace of King Herod Antipas. To the Jewish people, Herod is a pretender, a half-breed, a Roman puppet, but inside these walls he is the king, and tonight the king is paranoid.
He is sitting in the grand office. It is a room designed to intimidate. The finest rugs cover floors of every color in the rainbow. The walls are lined with stunning artwork, and the view out the portico doors offers the most commanding look at the city he rules but does not own.
Herod is waiting for a guest, a relative, a man who walks between the world's Jewish law and Roman citizenship, a man named Paul.
Paul enters. He freezes. He is small, intense, perhaps a bit overwhelmed by the display of power. Herod doesn't stand. He just watches. He waits. He lets the silence do the heavy lifting.
Finally, the king speaks. His voice isn't angry. It's smooth, welcoming the voice of a predator inviting prey into the den.
Paul, my good man, do come in. Sit, please. Take some wine. You are a family after all.
Paul remains standing, frozen. He knows that being quote-unquote family to a Herod is often a death sentence.
Paul, sit.
Embarrassed, the little man from Tarsus sits. He stammers out an apology. "Forgive me, sire."
No forgiveness needed.
Herod
nods to a servant, who fills Paul's glass. Paul gulps, it's dry. Nerves, Herod smiles. He raises his own glass for a toast. To life and to Jerusalem.
To life, to Jerusalem, and to her king.
Herod nods. He likes that. He leans forward, the pleasantries evaporating like mist. He gets down to business. Judging from the length of your visit, it seems you have found Jerusalem to your liking. It also seems you have taken an interest in this Galilean fellow, Jesus.
Paul shifts in his seat. The wine turned sour in his stomach. He knows where this is going. If the king thinks he's a follower of the Galilean, he won't leave this room alive. He nods slowly. "Yes, I have."
Herod reads the panic in Paul's eyes. He raises a hand to calm him. Don't worry, Paul. I don't think you are a follower. If I did, this meeting would have been less friendly.
Herod chuckles, a low, dry sound.
Especially not after the man has embarrassed you publicly, twice at least.
Paul winces. The king knows. The king knows about the debates. He knows about the humiliation. Herod smiles at Paul's discomfort. He loves maintaining the upper hand. He swirls the wine in his glass again, watching the red liquid spin.
And then Herod shifts the conversation. He stops talking like a king and starts talking like a handler. My initial interest in the Galilean was little more than some sort of cultural fascination. But with recent events, let us just say my interest has taken a different turn.
He lets Paul wait. He lets the silence stretch out until it is almost unbearable. He is looking for something he can use. He knows that knowing a man's weakness is more important than knowing his strength. And he sees the weakness in Paul. He sees the ambition. He sees the rage.
Herod leans across the massive desk. The mask falls away completely. I want you to help me kill Jesus. And welcome back to the podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Lena.
The scene you just heard comes directly from the historical narrative we are investigating today. It is the moment the switch was flipped.
For 2,000 years, we have been told a very specific story about the Apostle Paul. We've been told he was a religious zealot who hated Christians because he loved the Jewish law. We've been told his motivation was theological.
But the documents we are examining in this series tell a darker story. They suggest that Paul wasn't driven by theology. He was driven by politics. He was driven by power.
And he was recruited.
Today in part 2, we are opening the counterintelligence file on Paul of Tarsus. We're going to look at him not as a saint, but as an asset.
We're going to use the lens of modern espionage to examine his life. And when you do that, when you stop looking for miracles and start looking for motives, a terrifying picture emerges.
We're going to explore the theory that Paul was what intelligence agencies call a false defector.
A false defector is exactly what it sounds like. It's a spy who publicly leaves his own side to join the enemy. They make a big show of it. They say, I've seen the light. I'm with you now.
But they haven't switched sides. They have infiltrated. Their job is to gain the trust of the rebels, rise to a position of leadership, and then steer the movement in a direction that helps the empire.
Think about it, Mark.
Yeah.
Who benefited from Paul's work? Did the Jewish rebels benefit? No. Their movement was fractured. Their leadership, it was undermined, and eventually their city was destroyed.
Yeah, did the Roman Empire benefit? Absolutely. Paul preached a gospel that told rebels to pay their taxes to Caesar. He preached a gospel that said slavery and government oppression were ordained by God. He pacified the most dangerous revolutionary movement in the history of Rome.
And today we are going to show you the receipts. We're going to show you the contradictions in his cover story. We are going to show you the trail of Roman money that funded his travels.
We're going to show you the military protection he received, protection that no mere tent maker should have ever had.
And perhaps most disturbing of all, we're going to show you the bodies. Because people who stood in Paul's way tended to end up dead.
This isn't the Sunday school version, folks. This is the classified file. This is part 2, the Agent of Rome.
Let's begin the investigation.
Welcome back. Today, we're going to build a profile in criminal psychology or counterintelligence. You build a profile based on behavior, resources, and anomalies.
And when you build a profile on the Apostle Paul using the lens of modern espionage, the results are disturbing. We are drawing heavily here from the work of Figes Voskulin, a researcher who looked at Paul not as a saint, but as a suspect.
Let's start with red flag number 1, the cover story.
Every spy needs a legend. For Paul, it's the road to Damascus. We've heard it 1,000 times. The bright light, the voice from heaven, the blindness.
It's a great story, but if you actually sit down and read the accounts in the book of Acts, specifically chapter 9, 22, and 26, the story keeps changing.
It's really sloppy tradecraft. In Acts 9, Luke records that the men with Paul heard a voice but saw no one.
Okay, so they heard it, but then in Acts 22, Paul tells the story again. And this time he says, the men saw the light, but did not hear the voice.
And then in Acts 26, Paul changes it yet again. He says everyone fell to the ground. Wow, this is like getting so dramatic.
I know.
It's like telling a fish story. It gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
But in the first version, only he fell.
If I'm a Roman interrogator and my suspect gives me 3 different versions of the most important event of his life, I'm locking him up.
But Mark, there is something even more chilling about the Damascus story. It contradicts Jesus.
This is the smoking gun for me. It's Matthew 24, 23 through 26, where Jesus is warning his disciple about the false prophet who will come.
And he gets incredibly specific about geography. Jesus says, "Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, go not forth, believe it not."
So Jesus says, if a guy comes to you and says, I met the Messiah out in the desert, he is a liar. And a few years later, Paul walks in and says, hey guys, I met the Messiah out in the desert.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Let's move to red flag número 2, number 2, the protection.
If Paul really was the leader of a Jewish rebel sect, which is what the Christians, quote unquote, were considered, Rome should have hunted him down. But Paul, he gets VIP treatment.
There's a scene in Act 21 that Luke recorded. Paul causes a riot in the temple. The Roman garrison rushes in to arrest him.
But instead of dragging him off, the Roman captain lets Paul stand on the fortress stairs and give a speech to the mob.
Think about that. A Roman commander allowing a prisoner to incite a mob in a language the Romans couldn't even understand.
It is a military absurdity. Peter calls it out in our text. He says the only way Paul could pull that off is if he has some serious connections all the way to Rome.
And those connections become undeniable when Paul is moved from Jerusalem to Caesarea. This is the extraction.
If you have your Bibles, you can open up to Acts 23:23. The Roman commander orders a detail to escort Paul. Listen to these numbers: 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen.
That's 470 Roman troops assigned to protect one Jewish tent maker. That is a small army. That is not a prisoner transfer, Lena. That is a VIP extraction. And finally, red flag number 3, the funding.
Spying is expensive. Paul was constantly on the move. Who paid the bills? His cover story was that he was a tent maker.
But stitching goat hair tents doesn't pay for international sea voyages or legal fees in Rome.
In the epilogue of Apostle Paul, Antichrist, we find a letter from Nero to Paul. Nero writes, "Let it suffice for me to say that your family has been awarded a rather large contract for siege-class tents."
Siege-class tents. Paul wasn't making tents for campers. He was making tents for the Roman army.
He was funding the creation of Christianity with the profits from the war machine that was destroying the Jewish people.
So let's recap this profile. The changing cover story, the military protection, the government funding.
When you stack it up like that, it's hard to see him as a persecuted saint. He looks like a wolf.
And that's exactly what the original apostle called him.
That's crazy. I mean...
So we've established the profile. But an intelligent asset doesn't just sit around. An asset has a mission: disruption.
For years, the church has taught us that the conflict between Paul and the original apostles, Peter and James, was just a minor theological spat. But when you read the text, you see a hostile takeover.
Now, we need to be clear about who we are talking about here. There were two men named James. There was James, the disciple, who was beheaded by Herod early on.
But we're talking about the other James, James the Just, the actual blood brother of Jesus. He took over the leadership of the church in Jerusalem, and he was the man standing in Paul's way.
And the apostle didn't just suspect Paul, they identified him. In our source book, there is a pivotal scene where Peter connects the dots using wolf prophecy.
Mark, can you read that warning that Jesus gave them in Matthew 7:15?
Sure. Beware of false prophets, which comes to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they're ravening wolves.
Wolves. Now think about Paul. What was the one thing he bragged about more than his Roman citizenship? His lineage.
In Romans 11:1, he tells everyone, I am an Israelite of the tribe of Benjamin.
But Peter remembers the ancient prophecy from Genesis 49. The patriarch Jacob says, Benjamin shall be, quote, a ravenous wolf.
Paul is the only apostle from the tribe of Benjamin, the tribe of the wolf.
And what does a wolf do? He separates the sheep from the shepherd. Look at what happened in Antioch. Paul bragged about publicly humiliating Peter. He was dismantling the leadership.
The Cold War couldn't last forever. It had to turn hot.
It all comes to a head in Jerusalem. Passover. The city is swollen with pilgrims. The Roman garrison is on high alert.
James the Just decides he can't stay silent anymore. He goes to the temple to preach the true message, the message of the kingdom, not the message of empire.
And Paul is there. He's watching. He realizes that if James succeeds, if the people listen to James, the Roman control over Judea falls apart.
Paul had to act. Now history records that high priest Ananias incited the mob against James. But our investigation suggests Paul was the catalyst, the agent in the crowd.
And we see this historically recorded in the book of Acts with the stoning of Stephen. It says that Paul held the cloth that he was wearing, his tunic, while they were stoning him to death. And that Paul was probably the one that incited the whole thing. The book describes Paul moving through the mob, as he did with Stephen, whispering, shouting, whipping them into a frenzy. He knows exactly what buttons to push.
Stone him! Stone the blasphemer! He speaks against the temple.
He incites the riot, and then the violence breaks out. The mob rushes the steps.
History tells us James was thrown from the pinnacle of the temple. He crashed to the ground, broken but alive.
And while he was praying, whispering, Father, forgive them, a man with a fuller's club stepped forward.
And finished the job.
Now, did Paul swing the club himself? Maybe, maybe not. But if he incited the mob, if he was the agent of Rome planted to disrupt the movement, then the blood is on his hands.
With James dead, the head of the resistance was gone. The shepherd was struck.
And just as Jesus predicted, the sheep scattered.
So James is dead. Paul has won the war, but he has a PR problem. He can't go down in history as a murderer.
He needs a legacy. He needs a biography that paints him as the hero. So he turns to his traveling companion, the Greek doctor, Luke.
But Luke is trapped. He sees Paul's madness, so he decides to become a double agent. He writes Paul's history, the Acts of the Apostles, but he plants clues.
Clue number 1, and this is probably something you never have read in your Bible like this, the Trojan horse. In Acts 20, verse 4, Luke lists Paul's companions. He includes a man named Sopater of Berea, the son of Pyrrhus.
To a first century Greek reader, Pyrrhus was a famous spy who hid inside the Trojan horse.
By linking Paul to the name Pyrrhus and the city of Troy, Luke is screaming, this is a Trojan horse operation. We are being infiltrated.
So clue number 2, the impossible speech. Luke writes the Roman captain gave Paul license to speak to the mob.
Luke included that detail because he knew any reader under Roman rule would say, that's impossible. He was documenting the collusion.
But the biggest clue is what Luke didn't write, the ending of Acts.
It just stops. I remember, reading Acts, and then at the end, I'm like, wait a second, what happened at the end? What happened to Paul? Paul is in Rome under house arrest. No trial, no execution. Tradition says Nero beheaded him, but the Bible never records it. And why is that? I mean, seriously, we're looking at something that is building to a crescendo.
Mm-hmm.
You usually chronicle the life of someone who, the original Paul the Apostle, the martyr of the faith. There's no recorded history of him being beheaded. It's just this legend of some sort.
Because it never happened. In the epilogue of the book, we see Paul living out his days in the palace of Nero, not as a prisoner, but as a guest, a valet.
And it is there, lounging with the emperor, that Paul and Nero put the finishing touches on their masterpiece. They need a name for this new religion.
They called it Christianity.
They need a leader, a pope. Nero suggests Paul, but Paul knows he needs to cover his tracks. He needs to co-opt the authority of the men he killed.
So he takes a new name, a name that belonged to a fisherman he humiliated in Antioch.
He takes the name Peter.
The ultimate identity theft. The wolf didn't just eat the sheep, he wore the shepherd's skin. The temple is gone. Jerusalem is a smoking ruin. If you believe traditional history, Paul died around the same time.
But our investigation suggests Paul survived. He went to work for the new management, the Flavian dynasty, Vespasian and his son Titus, the general who destroyed Jerusalem.
So let's look at the timeline. In 1 Thessalonians 2:16, Paul writes about the Jews. The wrath of God has come upon them to the uttermost.
Has come. Past tense. If Paul wrote that in the 50s AD, it makes no sense. The wrath, the destruction of Jerusalem, well, that didn't happen until 70 AD.
Which means Paul was writing after 70 AD. He was alive.
And he helped the Flavians build a religion that honored Titus. The earliest Christian symbol wasn't a fish. It was an anchor wrapped around a dolphin.
And here's the kicker. The symbol was the royal crest of Emperor Titus.
And by adopting this symbol, his symbol, Titus's, the early church was signaling, we are the religion of Titus. We are the religion of the conqueror.
It is a chilling conclusion, but it explains so much. It explains why the headquarters of faith moved from Jerusalem to Rome. It explains why the symbols of the faith, the keys, the fish, the anchor, are Roman symbols.
I mean, look at the profile, the false defector, the Roman agent, the wolf, the usurper.
History is written by the victors, and Paul won.
The question we're left with is this. If the religion we know is the religion of Paul, where is the religion of Jesus?
Where is the message of the kingdom within?
Maybe it's not in a cathedral. Maybe, as Jesus said, it's inside you, waiting to be found.
This has been part 2 of our series. We've looked at the agent, we've looked at the crime.
And we are done a lot earlier than I expected, but we're going to go with part 3. And, I'm going to go into this and find part 3, and we're going to continue this.
Yeah, so while she's doing that, I think it's rather interesting that most people that are Christians follow the words of Paul. Corinthians is totally all of Paul's work. And he tries to pretend that Jesus has spoken to him, has given him such messages, just like that fake light that he saw. That was the same lies throughout Paul's writing. Everything that Christians believe is a version of the Roman, the Catholics, the whole political, religious, what's the word I'm looking for? Association or organization.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's not whatever Jesus, which was not the Son of God, was one of the many time travelers that came to wake us up from this nightmare that humanity has been living in. He definitely was not a savior. He didn't come here to be worshiped. He came here to wake us up. If you look at what he told the Pharisees, your father's the devil. Everything he did was bad for business. This is why they crucified him and they killed him, and then very smartly turned him into a religion.
And it boggles my mind that this is something that has become the story that everyone believes. Now we're having a conversation online with this person called Augustine, some person who's a Catholic, and he was like making fun of our, little short promo that we did for this episode. And he just assumes that things were done the way he thought they were done, that Paul was beheaded. And it's like, you don't have any proof that happened.
It's not in the Bible. It's not anywhere. And it's just like hearsay.
I mean, so we're going to continue this, go down this rabbit hole, but we're going to go into what was the message that Jesus actually was trying to teach and what happened. And amazingly, how did this get rediscovered?
So, Upper Egypt, December 1945. The war in Europe is over. But here, under the shadow of the Jabal al-Tarif cliffs, time stands still.
A peasant named Muhammad Ali al-Saman is digging. He's not looking for gold. He isn't looking for history. He's looking for sabak, soft soil to use as fertilizer for his crops. He's tired. He's sweating.
He stops. He scrapes away the dirt with his hands. It's a jar, a massive red earthenware jar sealed with bitumen.
Muhammad Ali hesitates. In the folklore of Egypt, sealed jars in the desert often contain a jinn, a spirit that you do not want to let out. But poverty is louder than superstition. He thinks maybe there is gold inside.
He smashes the jar, but there is no gold. No genie, just old dusty bundles of papyrus wrapped in leather, 13 books.
Disappointed, he gathers them up. He wraps them in his tunic and heads home. He has no idea that he's carrying the literary equivalent of an atomic bomb.
That night, in a mud brick house, his mother's baking bread. She needs kindling for the clay oven. She sees the old books her son brought home. She tears a few pages out of a codex.
She crumples the papyrus, pages written in the 4th century, containing the secret words of Jesus, and she tosses them into the fire.
They burned. The straw ignited, the bread baked, and the smoke drifted up the chimney.
They didn't know they were burning the very words that Rome had tried to kill for 2,000 years. They didn't know they just found the antidote to the empire.
They had found the Nag Hammadi library. For the last 2 episodes, we've been deconstructing a lie. We looked at how Paul of Tarsus, a Roman citizen and likely an intelligence asset, hijacked the Jewish movement of Jesus.
We looked at the murders, the politics, the creation of a state religion designed to control the masses through guilt and hierarchy. We're calling it the Matrix.
But if part 2 was the deconstruction, today is the reconstruction. Because if the version of Christianity we know is the Roman version, then where is the real one?
Where is the real message that James died for? Where is the gospel of the kingdom that Jesus actually preached?
For centuries, historians told us it was lost. They told us the heretics were wiped out and their books were burnt.
But they missed a jar.
Today in part 3, we are going on a recovery mission. We're going to look at the survivors, the blood relatives of Jesus who Rome couldn't kill.
We're going to open the books found in that jar in Egypt, specifically the Gospel of Thomas, and read the words that Paul tried to silence.
And we're going to discover a theology that is dangerous to the empire. A theology that says you aren't born broken. You aren't born in sin. You are born with a spark of God inside you.
Paul built a church of stone. Jesus built a temple of spirit. Today we find the keys to unlock it. Let's open the jar.
So we found the books in the jar. But books are just paper and ink. What about the people?
For centuries, we've been told that after Jesus died, his followers simply became Christians. We assume Peter and Paul shook hands, started the Catholic Church, and that was that.
But history tells us a very different story. There was a group of survivors, a group that held on to the original teachings of Jesus. They rejected Paul. They rejected the Roman Empire, and they had a name.
They were called the Ebionites. In Hebrew, Ebionim. It means the poor ones.
Now, this wasn't just a nickname. It was a badge of honor. Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." These people saw themselves as the guardians of the original faith. And if you notice that Christianity today does not look like anything.
Doesn't resemble that at all.
That time walker that came throughout time to wake us up, to give us the key of freedom, was hijacked.
Thanks to new research now, though, we know exactly what they believed. And it is shocking.
First, they rejected the virgin birth. They believed Jesus was the natural-born son of Joseph and Mary. He wasn't a demigod like Hercules. He was a man.
They taught a doctrine called adoptionism. They believed Jesus became the Messiah at his baptism, when the Spirit descended like a dove. He wasn't born divine. He earned his anointing through perfect obedience.
Think about the implication of that. If Jesus was a man who became divine through righteousness, then you can do the same. It supports the original blessing theology we've been talking about.
But here's the most fascinating detail. The Ebionites had their own rituals. They rejected blood sacrifice, theology of Paul. So when they took communion, they didn't use wine.
They used water.
Bread and water. They called it the pure meal. They believed Jesus came to abolish animal sacrifice, not to become one.
And they had a code name for Paul. They never spoke his name in their writings, like the pseudo-Clementine homilies. They referred to him only as the hostile man, or sometimes the enemy.
Imagine that. The man we call St. Paul was known to the original followers of Jesus as the enemy.
But within this group of poor ones, there was an inner circle, a royal circle, the actual biological relatives of Jesus.
We know them by a specific Greek title, the desposini.
It means those belonging to the master. These were the cousins, the nephews, and the grandchildren of the Holy Family. And for 300 years, Rome hunted them down.
It started with the Emperor Vespasian, then Domitian, then Trajan. They all issued orders to hunt down the family of David.
Why? Because they weren't just religious figures. They were keeping a secret about the genealogy of Jesus.
Now, this is a critical part of the mystery. If you look at your Bible, Matthew and Luke give two totally different family trees for Jesus.
Matthew gives the royal line through King Solomon. It's a list of kings. It's political. It's the kind of list a Roman emperor would worry about because it lays claim to a throne.
But Luke gives a different lineage. He traces Jesus through Nathan, Solomon's older brother. the non-royal son of David. It's a blood lineage, not a political one.
Our investigation suggests that the Desponcini were protecting the Luke genealogy. They were protecting the family record against the official record. They knew Jesus wasn't here to be a political king like Solomon. He was here to be a spiritual restorer like Nathan.
But Rome didn't care about the difference. To Rome, son of David meant rebel king. So the Desponcini had to hide. They hid in the mountains of Bithynia. They hid in the deserts of Syria. They kept the true genealogy safe.
And then in the year 318 AD, almost 300 years after the crucifixion, they decided it was time to come out of hiding.
Constantine had just legalized Christianity. The persecution was supposedly over. So the Desponcini sent a delegation to Rome. They wanted to meet with the Bishop of Rome, the man we call Pope Sylvester.
They thought, finally we can restore the true faith. We are the family of the founder. Surely the church will listen to us.
They were wrong. Rome, the Lateran Palace, 318 AD. The air is cold and smells of incense and power.
On one side of the room sits Pope Sylvester. He is dressed in silk and gold. He lives like a prince, funded by the Emperor Constantine.
On the other side stands Joseph. He is the leader of the Desponcini. He is dressed in rough wool. He looks like a Judean farmer, but in his veins runs the blood of King David.
You claim to be the king of the Lord? We were told his line ceased long ago.
We survived, Bishop. We survived the swords of Nero. We survived the fires of Titus. We possess the true scroll of the lineage, the line of Nathan, not the line of kings you fear.
And what is it you seek? Alms? Protection?
We seek justice. We ask three things. First, that the Bishop of Jerusalem be recognized as the true center of the faith, not Rome. Jerusalem is the mother. Rome is but a daughter.
Rome is the seat of the empire and the seat of Peter.
Second, we ask that you stop sending money to the Gentiles who preach the lies of the hostile man. You must return to the law. You must teach that our cousin Jesus, what he actually taught, not this Roman mystery religion.
Paul is the apostle to the Gentiles. His word is scripture.
Paul was a liar, an apostate. We ask that you renounce him.
Sylvester stands up. He looks at his dusty Jewish man. He sees the threat. He admits that Jesus has living relatives. If he admits that Jerusalem is the center, the power of the Pope evaporates. The church has spoken. The emperor has spoken. There is no place for Jewish superstitions here.
We are his flesh and blood.
The church is the body of Christ now, not you. You are dismissed. It was the final eviction.
That meeting actually happened. It is recorded in church history, and the result was catastrophic. The Desponcini were rejected. The family was replaced by the institution.
Think about the theology behind that. Paul taught that Jesus was a cosmic being, a pre-existent Son of God who effectively rented a human body for 33 years.
If Jesus is a cosmic being, his human DNA doesn't matter. His human family is irrelevant. The church becomes his family.
He was the perfect coup. By elevating Jesus to the status of a Roman god, Paul and his successors erased the need for the human Jesus and his inconvenient Jewish family.
So the Desponcini went back into the desert. They faded into history. And the Roman church, the church of Paul, church of Constantine, became the only game in town.
But they left something behind.
They didn't just leave a genealogy, they left a library.
Because while Desponcini were being silenced in Rome, the monks in Egypt were bearing jars.
And in those jars was the fifth gospel, the gospel that proves Joseph was right.
So the family was silenced. The Desponcini were sent packing by the Pope. Rome thought they had won. They thought they had successfully erased the original message of Jesus.
But ideas are harder to kill than people, especially when you bury them in the desert.
Let's go back to the jar found in Egypt in 1945, the Nag Hammadi Library. Inside, scholars found 52 texts. Some were confusing, some were mystical, but one of them changed everything.
It was titled The Gospel of Thomas.
Now let's be clear, this isn't a gospel like Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. There is no narrative. There is no virgin birth. There are no miracles. There is no crucifixion. And there is no resurrection.
It's just a list, 114 sayings of Jesus. It starts with the words, "These are the secret sayings which the living Jesus spoke, and which Didymus Judas Thomas wrote down."
Didymus means twin. Thomas means twins. Tradition holds this was written by Judas Thomas, the apostle. And scholars date some of these sayings to be before the canonical gospels were written.
This means we might be looking at raw data, the notes taken by the students before Paul came in and edited the textbook.
And when you read Thomas, you realize immediately why the church hated it, because the Jesus in Thomas sounds nothing like the Jesus of Paul.
Let's look at the core theological conflict. Paul's entire theology rests on one pillar, sin. Paul says in Romans that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. He says that we are dead in our trespasses.
Paul teaches that you are broken. You are separate from God. And the only way back is through an external mechanism, the blood sacrifice of Jesus, administered by the church.
But listen to saying 3 in Gospel of Thomas. Jesus says, "If those who lead you say to you, 'See, the kingdom is in the sky,' then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, 'It is in the sea,' then the fish will precede you."
He's mocking the idea of an external heaven. He's mocking the Roman idea of a God who lives up there or out there.
And then he drops the hammer. He says, "Rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father."
Did you catch that? He doesn't say, "I am the Son of God and you are dirty sinners." He says, "You are the sons of the living Father."
It's a theology of original divinity. Jesus isn't a savior coming to rescue you from God's wrath. He is a teacher coming to remind you of your own nature.
This destroys the Pauline matrix. If I'm already a son of God, if the kingdom is already inside of me, I don't need a bishop. I don't need a pope. I don't need to pay for forgiveness.
In saying 70, Jesus says something even more radical. He says, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you."
Salvation isn't something you get from a priest. It's something you birth from within yourselves. It's gnosis, knowledge, self-knowledge.
Kind of reminds me of this YouTube videos we watched this morning, talking about how spirits aren't actually granted to a human being, that they develop their spirit. Some people develop their spirit and choose to transcend this physical reality.
Exactly. And some people choose to remain ignorant and continue to worship things outside of them.
So that gnosis and that knowledge is part of that understanding that Jesus wanted others to know about.
Exactly. That's why he, actually spread the message that he was spreading, but they hijacked it and turned it into the religion of Christianity.
Paul hated gnosis, but who else hated gnosis? Was that Yahweh that hated gnosis
he hated
as well
gnosis,
in the garden?
yeah. Yes.
I mean, we have these deities and these people in the Bible who they talk about being honest and just people, but they hate when people find the truth.
Yeah, because they want to keep us dumbed down and dead asleep.
Paul warned against knowledge falsely so called. Why? Because a person who knows that they are divine, well, they cannot be controlled.
And what is the warning all the time? Oh, we are warned about people like you that come and say what they say. Well, if somebody tells you that, because they know it's going to happen, it's going to like, there's nothing, entre cielo y tierra no hay nada oculto. Between the sky and the earth, there's nothing that could be hidden. And eventually the truth comes out. So they're going to try to warn you against the truth because they want to keep you dumbed down. I mean, it makes so much sense.
And they're just going to like throw this, like
evil
common word out. Like everything that isn't like of Christianity is called Gnostic.
I know.
And Gnostic, what does that mean?
Knowledge. Same thing as the occult. Ooh, the occult doesn't mean anything evil. It's just hidden knowledge.
To be found.
To be found.
I mean, Jesus himself said he preached his message in parables. He taught in parables so that people that would understand it, that could have the ears to understand.
Those that have eyes to see or ears to hear, let them,
Yeah.
So there's another saying in Thomas that feels like a direct shot at Paul's theology of faith alone. Paul taught that works didn't matter, only beliefs.
But in saying 12, the disciples asked Jesus who will lead them after he is gone. Now remember, the Roman church says Peter is the leader.
But in Thomas, Jesus says, no matter where you are to go to James the just, for whose sake heaven and earth came into being.
He names James, the very man Paul could have murdered, the very man that was knocked off the pinnacle of the temple. The very man who preached that faith without works is dead.
This confirms the connection. The Gospel of Thomas isn't some weird alien document. It preserves the theology of the Jerusalem church, the theology of James.
We've talked about
We've talked about how Paul and Rome silenced the family of Jesus. We've talked about how they silenced the theology of the kingdom. But there was one more target, a target that threatened the Roman order just as much as the Jewish rebels.
the women.
If you look at the ministry of Jesus, the historical Jesus, it was radically egalitarian. Women were disciples. Women funded the ministry. And most importantly, a woman was the first witness to the resurrection.
Mary Magdalene, in the canonical Gospels, even the ones edited by the church, they couldn't scrub this detail out.
Jesus appears to Mary first. He tells her to go instruct the men. Traditions calls her the apostle to the apostles.
But in the Roman Empire, women were property. A religion led by women would never be accepted by the Roman elite. It would be laughed out of the Senate.
So if Paul wanted to sell his new religion to the empire, he had to scrub the women out. He had to replace Jesus' radical inclusion with Roman patriarchy.
We see the story of Jesus teaching, in the house with Mary and Martha, the whole scenario of like, why is Martha, Mary just sitting here, Martha's working, and, Jesus is including women.
So Kinetic 44 joins us and it says, but Thomas also calls the world a corpse. So a corpse came into being for the sake of James?
Good question. So if Paul wanted to sell this new religion to the empire, he had to scrub the women out. He had to replace Jesus' radical inclusion with Roman patriarchy. And we have the smoking gun. It's in 1 Timothy 2:12, a letter attributed to Paul.
He writes, I do not permit a woman to teach or to assume authority over a man. She must be quiet.
Compare that to Jesus, who sat Mary of Bethany at his feet to teach her. Compare that to Jesus, who sent Mary Magdalene to teach the apostles.
It is a direct contradiction. Jesus empowered women, Paul silenced them, and the reason was political. You can't build an imperial church with female leaders.
So the question is a good one. Thomas also calls the world a corpse. So a corpse came into being for the sake of James. Yeah, I'll have to think about that one. I mean, I don't really have an answer. But just like the Gospel of Thomas, the truth about Mary, it didn't stay buried forever.
In the same era that Nag Hammadi texts were hidden, another text was circulating. It's called the Gospel of Mary.
And it contains a scene that perfectly captures the coup. In the text, Mary Magdalene is sharing secret teachings Jesus gave her. She is comforting the disciples.
I want to address that. What does that have to do with anything, though? Seriously. The Thomas also calls the world a corpse. I mean, if you look at, the world's a corpse.
Yeah, but I mean,
but what does that have to do with?
But I would have to read it. In the whole. I don't have time right now to read it.
I know we have a show that we have to whatever, but in the context of what we are explaining, what does that have to do? I mean, we need to have the bigger context where it's just like what Christians do. They just throw one scripture and then they forget about the ones before and out that goes after.
I just don't know what the grounding is. I know. The comment.
So, but Peter, who is in this narrative, represents the orthodox. Male hierarchy is furious.
So Kinetic said something else.
It just undermines the James authority.
Okay. James the Just was just the brother, flesh, blood, half-brother of Jesus. I mean, he was the leader of the church in Jerusalem.
And so my take, says Valid, my take is, man, Sophia became the world. And then he says, like it's being sarcastic.
Listen to what Peter says in this lost gospel. Did he really speak privately with a woman and not openly to us? Are we to turn about and all listen to her? Did he prefer her to us?
It's jealousy. It's a power struggle. Did he prefer her?
And Levi, Matthew, answers him. He says, Peter, you've always been hot-tempered. If the Savior made her worthy, who are you to reject her? Surely the Savior knows her very well. That is why he loved her more than us.
He loved her more than us. That is a dangerous idea. That's the spiritual successor to Jesus. Might not have been Peter or James, but Mary.
So how did the church fix this Mary problem? They couldn't just kill her. She was already famous.
So they did something worse. They destroyed her reputation. That's what they do.
It was the ultimate smear campaign. In the 6th century, Pope Gregory the Great gave a sermon. And in that sermon, he conflated Mary Magdalene with the sinful woman in Luke 7.
He labeled her a prostitute.
Nowhere in the Bible does it say she was a prostitute. Nowhere. But the label stuck. And, you watch the recent, that series of Jesus?
The Chosen.
The Chosen. It paints Mary as a prostitute.
Yeah.
So
think about the brilliance of the propaganda. If Mary is a leader, you have to listen to her. But if she's a repentant whore, she becomes a symbol of submission. She becomes a warning. Isn't there in the Da Vinci drawing, Mary is right to the side of Jesus? That was his right hand.
Right.
But the church continually wants to diminish that.
They turned the apostle to the apostles into a crying penitent at the feet of men.
The erasure of Mary was the final break in the wall of the matrix. We have talked about the library found in Egypt. But 2 years later, in 1947, another discovery shook the world. This time it was the caves of Qumran, near the Dead Sea.
The Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, usually scholars tell us these scrolls were written by a quiet group of monks called the Essenes, who lived hundreds of years before Jesus.
But there's another theory, a theory championed by scholars like Robert Eisenman. He argues that these scrolls aren't ancient history. They are contemporary commentaries on the war between James and Paul.
The scrolls don't use real names. They use code names. They talk about a hero called the Teacher of Righteousness. And they talk about a villain called the Spouter of Lies.
So let's look at the profile, the Teacher of Righteousness. It's described as a strict keeper of the law, a leader of the poor, and a man who was persecuted by the high priest.
That fits James the Just perfectly. He was the leader of the Ebionites, the poor, and he was murdered by the high priest Ananus.
But what about the villain? The scrolls describe a man they call the liar, or the spouter of lies. They said this man rejected the law in the midst of the whole congregation.
Does that sound familiar? It sounds exactly like the incident at Antioch, where Paul bragged about withstanding Peter to his face and rejecting the Jewish law in front of everyone.
The scrolls accuses this liar of leading the people astray with smooth words and building a community based on vanity.
And here is the smoking gun. One of the scrolls, known as 4QMMT, is a letter written by the leader of the community. In this letter, he uses a very specific phrase. He writes, "We have written to you so that you might understand the works of the law."
Works of the law, in Hebrew, Masei HaTorah.
Now, where else do we see that phrase?
We see in Paul's letters. In Romans and Galatians, Paul is obsessed with the exact phrase. He writes, "By the works of the law shall no flesh be justified."
Think about what that means. Paul wasn't writing the theology in a vacuum. He was writing a rebuttal.
If Eisenman is right, Paul had read the scroll. He had read James's manifesto on the works of the law, and he was writing counter-propaganda to destroy it.
So when you hold the Dead Sea Scrolls in one hand and Paul's letters in the other, you aren't looking at two different religions. You're looking at two sides of a war.
One side, the teacher of righteousness preaching the law. On the other, the spouter of lies preaching the empire. So the Dead Sea Scrolls identify a spouter of lies who fought against the teacher of righteousness. It fits Paul and James perfectly.
But there is still one question nagging at us. Why Paul? Why did the Romans and the high priest choose a tent maker from Tarsus for this high-level operation?
Professor Robert Eisenman, the man who connected the scrolls to James, points to a single verse in the New Testament that acts as a cipher. It unlocks Paul's true identity.
We usually skip over the greetings at the end of Paul's letters. It's just a list of names. But in Romans 16:11, Paul drops a bombshell.
He writes, "Salute, Herodian, my kinsman."
Herodian. It means little Herod. And kinsman? Well, that means blood relative.
Paul is admitting in his own writing that he is blood related to the Herod family, the same Herod Antipas who killed John the Baptist, the same Herod Agrippa who killed the apostle James.
This changes everything and explains the cold open of our show. When Herod Antipas called Paul into his office to recruit him, he wasn't hiring a stranger. He was hiring family.
Eisenman argues that Paul wasn't just a Roman agent. He was a Herodian prince.
This explains the money. This explains the 470 soldiers. This explains why he had access to the high priest. He was part of the ruling class that was trying to crush the Jesus movement from day one.
He didn't hate Christians because of the law. He hated them because they were a threat to his family throne.
So when James the Just stood up to Paul, he wasn't just standing up to a false teacher. He was standing up to the Herodian dynasty that had been killing prophets for generations.
It was the final battle in a blood feud. The family of David, Jesus and James, versus the family of Herod, Paul. So we have the Dead Sea Scrolls accusing a liar. We have the Herodian bloodline providing the motive. But we also have a document from the resistance itself.
It's right there in your New Testament, the Epistle of James.
We're treating this letter not just as scripture, but as a counterintelligence manual.
So again, let's look at James 2:20. James writes, "But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead?"
O vain man, in the Greek, the word is kinos. It means empty. Scholars argue this was a nickname for Paul used by the Jerusalem church.
And look at the specific doctrine James attacks. Paul preached justification by faith alone. In Romans 3:28, Paul says, "A man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law."
But James, writing specifically to counter this, says in James 2:24, "You see then that by works a man is justified and not by faith alone?"
It is the only place in the New Testament where the phrase faith alone appears, and it is preceded by the word not.
But the most powerful concept in the letter, and the one that ties it all back to the kingdom within, is a phrase James uses in chapter 1, verses 25.
He calls the true faith the perfect law of liberty.
Paul preached the law of sin and death. James taught a law of liberty.
If you understand royal law, which is love your neighbor as yourself, you don't need a policeman. You don't need a priest. You govern yourself.
And notice that is the way the system is created. They created the police not to protect you or I. They created them to protect the corporations. Everything. Yeah, so that is spiritual sovereignty. And that is exactly what Rome wanted to destroy. We have talked about spies. We have talked about murders. But now we have to talk about the prison itself, the matrix, that Paul built to replace the law of liberty.
And the foundation of that matrix is well known. Everybody knows it in Christianity. It's called original sin.
Oh, yes. If you grew up in the West, you know the drill. You're born broken. You're born separate from God. You need a mediator, a priest, a bishop, a pope to bridge the gap for you.
Paul explains this logic in the book Apostle Paul, Antichrist. He tells Luke, a people born with the seed of divinity govern themselves, but a people born in sin, they are beholden to an institution.
But here is the revolution. Jesus didn't come to start a religion based on original sin. He came to restore a priesthood based on original blessings.
And it has a name. It is called the Order of Melchizedek.
This comes from the book of Hebrews. It talks about a mysterious priest king named Melchizedek, who had
Melchizedek.
Melchizedek, who had no father, no mother, no genealogy.
The text says Jesus is a high priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek.
Think about what that means. If Jesus is a Melchizedek priest, he doesn't need the temple. He doesn't need the Levites. And he certainly doesn't need the apostolic succession of Rome.
But here's the best part. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus invites you into that same order. He says, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you.
You are a priest by birthright, but Paul couldn't allow that. He needed a system of control. To lock down the original sin system, Paul needed to change the rituals.
Walk into any cathedral. The central image is a corpse hanging on a cross. For 2,000 years, we have been told that his death, this death, Jesus' death, was necessary, that God required blood to forgive sin.
That just kind of tells you what kind of God you're worshiping. It's crazy. But the idea didn't come from Judaism, and it didn't come from Jesus. It came from Tarsus.
Paul's hometown, Tarsus, was a hub for mystery religions. It was a center for the worship of dying and rising gods like Mithras or Dionysus.
In this pagan cult, the logic was brutal. The gods are angry. The only way to appease their wrath is through the sacrifice of an innocent victim.
Judaism explicitly forbids this. I wish Christians would see this. Read Ezekiel 18. God says, the Son shall not bear the iniquity of the Father.
But Paul ignores the Jewish law and adopts the pagan law. In Romans 3:25, Paul describes Jesus as a sacrifice of atonement through his blood.
He paints a picture of a God who is so angry at humanity that he needs to kill his own son to calm down. That isn't the God of Abraham. That is a pagan deity.
He turned the cross into an altar, and he locked us into a system of guilt. But guilt wasn't enough. He also needed assimilation. We have talked about the pagan altar, but there is one more piece of the puzzle, one more thing Paul was obsessed with.
Circumcision.
If you read Paul's letter, he talks about circumcision constantly. He calls the people who practice as dogs and evil workers.
In Sunday school, we're told this is about grace versus works. But our investigation has uncovered a much more practical and political motive.
Let's go back to the culture of the time. In the Roman Empire, the center of social life was the gymnasium.
The gymnasium was where business was done. It was where politics happened, and the key rule of the Greek gymnasium? You exercise naked.
This created a massive problem for Jewish men. In a locker room full of Romans, a Jewish man was instantly identifiable. His circumcision was a mark.
It was the mark of the rebel. It marked him as a member of the tribe that refused to bow to Caesar.
So if you were a Jew who wanted to assimilate, the mark was a liability.
Enter Paul. Paul's mission was to assimilate the Jews. He wanted to erase the distinction between Jew and Greek.
So he preached against circumcision. He told them circumcision is nothing. He told them to remove the mark of their identity so they could blend in.
It was a cultural erasure program. Rome couldn't defeat the Jews as long as they remained separate.
But the final mechanism, the final nail in the coffin, was economic.
If you look at the structure of the Roman world, it was built on one specific model, the pater familias.
The father of the family. It was a pyramid scheme. The emperor was the father of the empire. The senator was the father of the clients. The master was the father of his slaves.
Power flowed down. Obedience flowed up.
Now look at Jesus. What did he teach? He taught a horizontal structure. He said, call no man father upon the earth, for one is your Father which is in heaven.
He flattened the pyramid. And that is a disaster for the Roman economy.
So Paul fixed it. He rebuilt the pyramid inside the church. He instituted the office of the bishop, then the elders, then the deacons, then the laity.
It mirrored the Roman administration perfectly. Bishop equals senator, priest equals client, layperson equals slave.
And this corporate structure was finalized in 325 AD at the Council of Nicaea. That was the board meeting where the empire officially acquired the franchise.
And they gave the empire the ultimate gift. Paul sanctified slavery.
And in Ephesians 6:5, Paul writes, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling as unto Christ.
Paul turned labor into worship. He told the slaves, don't rebel, don't run away, serve your master, and you will get your reward in heaven.
It was perfect. It was the perfect management software for an empire. We spent hours dissecting how Paul hijacked the faith. We've looked at the money, the soldiers, the theology, and the corporate structure. But there is one question we haven't answered.
Why did it work?
Why did millions of people accept Paul's version of Christianity and let the original version die? Was it just because Rome had the swords?
I don't think so. I think the answer is more uncomfortable. I think Paul gave the people exactly what they wanted.
In our research, we've come across a brilliant modern analogy. It compares Paul to Ray Kroc.
For those who don't know, Ray Kroc didn't invent McDonald's. The McDonald brothers did. They created a small, perfect restaurant with a great product.
But Ray Kroc came along and said, this is great. Let's franchise it. He didn't care about the arsenal quality of the burger. He cared about scale. He cared about the system.
Paul was the Ray Kroc of Christianity. Jesus, like the McDonald brothers, created the product, the spiritual truth. But Jesus didn't want a corporation. He didn't want a hierarchy.
But Paul looked at the Jesus movement and saw a franchise opportunity. He saw a way to build an empire.
But here's the dark side of that analogy. Why do people go to McDonald's? Because it's easy. Because it's predictable.
And that brings us to the Grand Inquisitor.
This is a famous scene from Dostoevsky's novel, The Brothers Karamazov. In the story, Jesus comes back to earth during the Spanish Inquisition. He starts healing people. He starts preaching freedom.
And the Grand Inquisitor, the head of the church, arrests Jesus. He throws him in a dungeon, and then he visits him in the middle of the night.
And he tells Jesus, why did you come back? To hinder us?
The Inquisitor explains that the church has spent centuries correcting Jesus' work. He says that Jesus made a terrible mistake. He offered people freedom.
But people don't want freedom. Freedom is terrifying. Freedom means you're responsible for your own soul. Freedom means you have to think for yourself.
Most people want security. They want miracle, mystery, and authority. They want someone to take the bread, bless it, and tell them they are saved. They want to be told what to do.
So Paul and the church he built gave the people what they secretly craved. He took away the burden of freedom. He said, just believe in this creed, pay your tithe, and obey the bishop, and you will go to heaven.
It was a transaction. You give us your obedience, we give you security.
Jesus offered the kingdom within. That is hard work. That requires you to wake up, which is not very popular these days, being woke.
Yeah.
Paul offered the kingdom of the church, and that allows you to stay asleep.
So when we ask, why did Paul win? The answer isn't just Roman power. The answer is human nature.
We traded our birthright for a franchise. We traded the messy, dangerous freedom of the spirit for the safe, orderly control of the matrix.
Paul wasn't just a deceiver, Lena. He was a supplier. He supplied the chains we asked for.
But the cell door isn't locked.
That is the secret. The door was never locked. You can walk out of the franchise anytime you want.
You just have to be brave enough to cook your own meal.
Yeah, hands up. We've been on a long journey. We've started in the palace of Herod. We follow the money to the siege tent. We follow the blood to the temple.
Today we followed the survivors into the desert.
When you put all the pieces together, the false defector profile, the wolf prophecy, the Herodian bloodline, the spouter of lies, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, the picture is undeniable.
Paul of Tarsus wasn't a saint who stumbled into the light. He was an operative who extinguished it.
He replaced the gospel of the kingdom, a message of internal freedom, with the gospel of the empire, a message of external control.
But here's the beautiful irony. Paul thought he won, but he couldn't kill the truth because the truth, it's not a building.
The truth is a seed, and seeds grow.
In 1945, the earth vomited up the Nag Hammadi Library. In 1947, the earth cracked open at Qumran. It's as if the planet itself is testifying.
And what it's saying, it is saying that Jesus said, the gospel of Thomas, the kingdom is within you.
You don't need the matrix. You don't need the guilt. You belong to the order of Melchizedek, a priesthood without genealogy, without permission, and without end.
The investigation is closed. The evidence is in. But the verdict, that's up to you.
You have a choice. You can continue to follow the religion of Paul, the religion of the empty man.
Or you can recover the religion of Jesus, the religion of the living Father who tells you you're everything. It's strange, isn't it? We started this series talking about a spy 2,000 years ago, a man who changed the world with a pen and a sword.
But in the end, this story isn't about Paul, and it isn't about James. It's about the long game.
Rome plays the long game. They built a system that lasted millennia. But the truth plays a longer game. It's waited in a cave in Qumran. It waited in a jar in Egypt. It waited for the fires of the Inquisition to burn out.
It waited for us.
We are the first generation in 1,600 years to have all the pieces on the table. We have the internet. We have the archaeology. We have the freedom to speak without fear of the executioner.
That means the responsibility has shifted. The Despotsni carried the torch as far as they could. The monks in Egypt carried it as far as they could.
Now the torch is in your hands. The gospel of the kingdom, the message of your own divinity, is no longer a secret. It's a choice.
So when you do turn off this podcast, don't just go back to sleep. Look at the world. Look at the institutions. Look at the matrix.
And then look inside.
Because that is where the resistance begins, not in a protest, not in a debate, but in the quiet realization of who you really are.
The empire is strong, but the truth is inevitable. At the beginning of this series, we told you to follow the money. We watched Paul take money from the Romans. We watched him deliver money to Jerusalem.
Now, at the end of the line, let's look at the return on investment.
Jesus of Nazareth was a homeless itinerant. He owned nothing. He told his followers, sell what you have and give to the poor. The Ebionites, his family, lived in poverty on purpose.
But the institution that Paul built, the one modeled after the Roman Empire,
it is the wealthiest organization on planet Earth. It owns cities, it owns banks, it holds billions in gold and real estate.
If Jesus was the founder and the Vatican is the result, there's a mismatch. You don't get from sell everything to golden palaces without changing the source code.
Paul was the one who changed the code. He introduced the Roman concept of auctoritas, authority and tithings. He built a structure designed to accumulate power, not distribution of it.
And that is the smoking gun. You don't need a degree in theology to see the deception. You just need a calculator.
The ancient of Rome didn't just kill a theology. He built a bank. There is a saying in the New Testament, one that ironically survived the edits. By their fruit, you shall know them.
It's a simple test. You look at the fruit to identify the tree.
We have spent 2 hours, or more or less, looking at the fruit of Paul's trees. We see empire, we see hierarchy, we see wars fought in the name of God. We see unmeasurable wealth.
And then we look at the fruit of the other tree, the tree of James and the Desposony. We see the poor ones. We see the peaceable kingdom. We see a family that refused to bow to Caesar.
2 different trees, 2 different fruits.
For 2,000 years, you've been fed fruit from only one of those trees. Rome cut the other one down and burned the roots.
But roots are resilience. They go deep.
Now that you know the difference, now that you can taste the difference between the fruit of the empire and the fruit of the kingdom, you have a choice to make.
Which tree are you going to water? You know, it is such a convenient plot. And what they do is like that guy that was riding on our trailer, the Catholic, he was trying to mock what we were saying. They've been taught to do that. They've been taught, the sheeple have been taught to turn against the people that don't want to fall for that same storyline. And it's like the writing's on the wall. It's so evident. It's all right there. We're living in a world based on the same system that Paul has built.
Yeah, it's the same exact system. I mean, the treasures of the Vatican are vast. You know, the owning of a property, entire nations. I mean, they literally have a piece of Italy that doesn't belong to Italy. It's their own country. The Vatican City is its own country.
And they don't pay taxes. I mean, the religion doesn't, if you have a church, you don't have to pay taxes.
And you look under the cathedrals in some of these older buildings, and there are bones under there.
The catacombs,
There's something sinister taking
Very
place.
sinister. Everything about religion, politics, and finances, the money changers, all that is very sinister. And people are lazy, so they rather feel safety, or what they believe is safety, and follow these systems that don't have your best interests at heart.
I mean, it's like they literally took Roman government buildings and turned them into cathedrals and shrines. And they literally took the vestments, clothing that they wore in Senate, and they transferred it over to a priest, you know, and cardinals and a pope. And it's
so gaudy and so like,
I mean, yeah.
I can't even find the words for it. You know, and the whole blood sacrifice.
It's excessive.
Yeah. The whole blood sacrifice, I mean, if people really would think about it, what reason would we have to continue to take the sins of a minute, like the Adamus, which wasn't just Adam and Eve, it was just a little part of, and we will be going into that and the creation of the different types of species that have been on this planet. I mean, the whole Christian story is just a blip. It's just a little small speck of what's happened throughout history.
And we're talking a period of 2,000 years.
I know. That's like
whatever the real timeline is. We don't even know if that's true, if it's a true 2,000 years or what. But there are, wow, you know, there's so much more that can be said.
And we do. We have stuff lined up that it's even going to blow your mind. Because to me, all this biblical stuff, it's almost like child's play. It's like they've taken this and they've like fed us this information to keep us, you know, like dangling a little carrot stick. And we want to make material gains in the world and go to college and get a degree.
I mean, what's the promise? You know, the promise of the future in heaven is streets made out of gold, crystal sea, your little mansion or your big mansion.
Because I know that's what people, you know,
your
crave.
Crown and all your, you know, your gold and the gates of pearl, and it's like a modern day version of the Wizard of Oz or something.
I know, and who was the Wizard of Oz? A fake. Yeah. So everything you've been taught, everything you think you know, it's all lies. The rabbit hole goes so deep. There's hard to find words to explain to you because it will blow your mind. It would literally blow your mind. All this arguments about biblical stuff, that's just like, you know, that's just like a little part of the story, but it's so deep that iceberg goes so deep down that a lot of people it'll go over their heads, or they'll call people crazy or whatever, because it's easier to believe the storylines you have been given. It's easier to make you believe you're born, you go to school, you go to college, you get a degree, you work for an institution for years, you get married, you have kids, you get old, you get sick, you die. Oh, wow. I mean, really?
Yeah.
That's the whole concept of you, a person? And then it's just like, it makes no sense to me. I know there's something way deeper, way bigger than what we have been told.
I mean, this is a prison.
Yeah, totally.
It isn't reality. This is what we've been forced to think is reality. Even the Bible will tell you, you know, the physical suffering that people will endure or the physical joy that they'll experience. You'll see your relatives in heaven, your great-grandmother, grandfather, or whatever, and it's like you're going to see your loved ones. And
that's the prison.
Like,
that's the prison.
It's all this, you know, obsession with the physical, with the body. And you find, you know, as trans people, we find people constantly trying to give us about, you know, crap about what we've done and who we are and our physical body. And it's like,
look, we're playing a game, and this is our vessel. This is we're creator gods, okay? But they're so limited in their thinking that they only think of biology, male and female, reproduction. You know, it's like, come on, what are we, 2? We graduated from that. That biological lesson they gave you in elementary school is bogus. It's so limited and so small that are you not capable of thinking beyond that?
But it's really not about that. It's really about the othering of people to make themselves look like superior.
Right.
You know, I mean.
But they don't realize that by them taking the freedoms away of other people, they're setting the stage for your freedom to be taken away. You're setting the stage for whatever doesn't fit the controlling government system at the moment. And if you have blue eyes and they think green eyes are better, then you with the blue eyes are going to also be taken away and put away in some camp. Or like they're doing with all the immigrants now and all the terrible things that are being done. You think that's funny. You think that's great. But next they'll come for you. And that's how the system works.
It is.
Divide and conquer. And if you're not in the right bloodline. Yeah. So we've been going on for an hour and 24 minutes.
Cool. So,
I really want to know what, because I look at that. We were talking about James, we were talking about Paul.
No, but we
Thomas,
did talk about James.
Yeah, but it says, but Thomas also calls the world a corpse.
Yeah, I really don't know. I'd have to look into that and try to understand but he said that
So a corpse
Thomas
came
was talking
into
about
being.
talking about it being a sarcastic comment, but
yeah, I just, I don't like not to being able to answer something, but, and, I kind of
we're not
we're not
infallible.
theological experts or anything like that. We do a lot of reading. We do a lot of.
I don't have a seminary degree. I mean, I went to Bible college, but
yeah,
But
yeah, so I guess that's all.
But it'd be interesting to find out what that entails. I mean.
I could understand the world, of course, because I look at this world and I look at it as a deceiving,
like the Gnostics and the
a very deceiving place that we were lured into, and we are being kept here, recycled. Our spirits being recycled constantly, and keep us worshiping these, archons and Yahwehs and all these storylines. But then I don't understand. A corpse came into being for the sake of James.
Yeah,
so a corpse came into being, meaning Jesus. Okay,
corpse,
Jesus for the sake of James. Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't go further with that because there's really not much to gather at this point. But the point being that the Apostle Paul, his messages, his storyline, if it were being fed to someone who is checking to see if their story corroborated with the evidence, then he would have failed in every level.
Oh, especially when you have 3 different storylines. So, like they said, they would automatically take him to jail because his alibi does not fit.
It really
there's
doesn't.
nothing that Paul has done or said. And I've had arguments with people online regarding Paul because they believe what Paul says. And it's Paul is an agent. Paul is a liar. Paul was a wolf in sheep's clothing. And they knew exactly what they were doing with Paul. And there's a lot of Paulinian writings in the Bible, Yeah,
I mean, the comparison of the amount of words that are attributed to Paul and the amount of words that are attributed to Jesus is, there's a stark contrast.
That's because the majority of stuff that Jesus spoke was not put in the Bible.
Or it was taken and hidden in a jar.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, that's what I said. It wasn't put in the Bible. Mm-hmm. They put the convenient stuff. They created certain, messages, but not at all what. Okay, let's see what we got. She said, I found this 56. Jesus said, he who has known the world has found a corpse, and he who has found a corpse, the world is not worthy of him. There we go. That's, the world has found a corpse, and he who has found a corpse, the world is not worthy of him. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Vahid.
Yeah, there's a lot of information in writings of historical texts that are like little pieces of the puzzle. And you have to learn how to put these pieces together, to really find the truth.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely...
She says that's from Thomas.
Okay.
Well, hold on. She said that's from Thomas. And then Kinetic 44, because of a saying, heaven and earth come into being for the sake of James. Then it goes on to call the world a corpse in another saying. So it doesn't sound like a good thing. Well, I think this world isn't a good thing. I think that we were trapped here by the demiurge people worship called Yahweh. And he says the saying 56 is an interesting parallel.
Yeah, I mean, the connection to, the concept of the demiurge and the ruler, controller, creator of this physical world,
mm-hmm.
the one that has nothing but malevolence in his heart towards humanity.
He hates us,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
You know, he really does. And that's why they call this the prison planet, the matrix. And the only way out of this is to get to know thyself, connect to who you are, remember who you are, break free from the chains, from this. I mean, it's like everything on this planet is cursed. Everything on this planet is like meant to hurt you, to destroy you. You go out in nature and the weather, and it's just constantly a destructive force. What loving God would create this? And then to turn around and tell people, well, you have free will. Well, free will is not a great thing because everything in nature knows laws that it has to follow. Human beings are the only ones that really mess everything up. And when you think of bad beings, what is it called? Malevolent beings, they're not malevolent. They are feeding off the energy that was placed in you by this Yahweh God. And this is why we have wars. This is why people are constantly fighting. You know, that whatever that demiurge touched in human, however he messed with our DNA, it's almost like building a robot and building a faulty system. You know, we have to break free from that faulty system. We have to find our divinity. The kingdom is within us.
And I think that message of the kingdom being within is the message that was the true, essence of what we're supposed to know.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
you two will do greater things than I. You know, it's like he never claimed to be a god or to be worshipped or any of that. That was all Paul. That was all the Romans. That, I mean, they knew what they were doing. It's like, give to Caesar what's owned to Caesar, whatever that saying is. You know, it's like they knew exactly what they were doing.
I mean, Paul never met, there's creative license given to the whole concept of that Paul was this Jeffrey Doherty book that we were pulling from, that he was the rich young ruler, and that he was the one that was trying to fool Jesus and stuff. Of course, there's no name given, but I just find it hard to believe that in the age and times that they were living in, Paul being a disciple of Gamaliel, being taught in Jerusalem, and Jesus visiting Jerusalem, that they wouldn't have had some kind of interaction, because they seem to have been of the same age, potentially. But Paul never talks about that. He never says that he met Jesus or that he spoke to Jesus or anything. I mean, but it's quite possible that he could have. It's quite
I don't think he
possible.
did. I don't think, and the stuff that I've read, he never, and what I've other works of people saying that they'd never met, that,
Right, but like I said, there's creative license that's been given, and the concept that he could have is not far-fetched to think that it wouldn't have happened.
So Kinetics says, I don't know if you could read it, if I make it bigger for you.
Oh, go ahead.
So he says, I take it you don't think Paul is Simon Magus?
I haven't really looked into that. Simon the Magician.
I mean, I'm sure that Paul probably took on different names, from Saul to Peter. When you have a deceiver like that will shapeshift to fit in whatever scenario. I've never heard of Simon Magus. If you would like to elaborate on that, and you could also call in. Let me see here. Let me bring the number up. If you want to call in and explain yourself a little bit more, because these one-liners are kind of hard to really address.
It's interesting. There was part of the research that I had done that looked into like the concept that if Paul was a Roman asset, that his goal was to neutralize the Jewish messianic movement. The Jews were expecting a physical Messiah to march into Jerusalem, to kick out the Romans and to sit on a real throne. So that was a real political threat, and that's what would get you killed. So,
well, it's all like we're seeing the world now, and we see the evangelicals, we see the Christian nationalists, we see it's all about politics, we see it's all about deception, control, money, stealing lands. It's been the same thing throughout history. It hasn't changed.
right.
America is Rome, you know, with the 800 military bases throughout the world, you know, pushing their agenda and their beliefs. They don't want other religions. They don't want other colors, other people, other nationalities. You know, they want to keep it pure. They want to keep it in their, you know, in their race. And
but it's like Paul's theology reflects that in 1 Corinthians 15. Paul argues against a physical resurrected body. He says flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. He argues for a spiritual body, a pneuma body. And think about the political utility of that. If the kingdom is spiritual, then the Messiah has a spirit body in heaven. He isn't coming back to kick Caesar off his throne.
Of course, that's why
the
they
spirit
created
Jesus is safe for Rome.
Yeah, but that's why they created everything. We talked about it Tuesday. They changed it all around to suit their needs. Your rewards are in heaven, not here on earth.
So you can worship a spirit Jesus but still pay your taxes.
Yeah.
And you could worship a spirit Jesus and still obey the emperor.
Right.
So, you know, this is just like ingenious.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's what the money lenders did. People didn't know that they were being ripped off. Yeah. They created a whole system to make people pay taxes, to make people pay certain things, keep people in poverty. I mean, look around you. How many billionaires really are there? You know, and there's like people, you could work as hard as you want. You can get as many degrees as you want, but you're only going to get so far. That's how the system is rigged.
I always noticed how arrogant Paul was in his writing. Sometimes he was just absolutely incorrigible. You know, he's just like, you know, he yells at himself and he yells at other people and he scolds people and then he's all happy. It's like,
I think it was kind of bipolar. I mean, I think the way the AI drew Paul's likeness pretty much fits his character.
Just a little more bald, I think.
They gave him, well, I don't know.
Gave him a bit more hair.
A little more hair.
In Galatians, though, Paul talks about James and Peter and he says that the men who actually knew Jesus.
It's too small.
It's okay. And he says, what they are means nothing to me. It's like, means nothing to me. Like, imagine saying that about the people that Jesus walked with. You know, it's like they cut out the cutouts. And they did it by claiming that he had a higher clearance than they did. He says that, you know, yeah, you walk with Jesus on the earth? Well, I hung out with him in the third heaven last night. So I win. And the result is that this earthly movement of James, which was dangerous to Rome, was labeled as a heresy. And the heavenly movement that Paul created, it was safe for Rome. And that became the state religion. You know, that's how you pull one over on the masses. You know, you destroy it from within. It's like,
well, that's what's being done
in this country right now.
That's what's being done with this country, and it's been done throughout history, throughout different countries. That this empire goes in, destroys the president, the dictator, whatever it is. If they can't bribe that dictator out of power and push themselves in there, they will destroy the country. They will take everything. I mean, it's the oldest trick in the world. It's been done forever, and it continues to be done. And people continue to give them that ability because people are very materialistic. They're very dead asleep. They don't want to do the work. They want to worship some Jesus character, be saved, and be done with it. You know, that's easy. That's easy for them.
I totally I mean, that's what is, like, people don't want to do the work. They want someone to save them. They want someone to take them, and to hold their hand and to help them along with, whatever they need, because, I mean, you have this reality of, like, you literally have the ability to become more than you think you are. You literally have within you is the spirit that is the spark of divinity that actually lives inside of each person, that spark. But it's just a spark. It's not a flame of, like, a fire. It's not some massive, cultivated thing. You have to cultivate it. You have to put in the work.
Spiritual work. It takes time. It's meditation. It's visualization. It's mindfulness. It's doing things to work your spirit, not just to put money in your bank account, not just to go to church and pray and get baptized and saved. That's pittance. People don't realize that is just so, like, non-important. What's important is for you to really work through the things that you came down here to do.
I mean, there are so many threads that we found within this study, within the research that we did, that it's like you find all these little clues and things, and then I'm just so grateful that we were able to put it together in a way that, that actually puts things into some sort of, like, connection.
And people are too lazy to like want to learn the truth. They just want the little storyline. Well, he was killed and beheaded. No, he wasn't. That's just a convenient lie to make you believe that, yes, see, he was a saint. And he wasn't.
Here's another thread. It's like Clement of Rome. He's the fourth pope. He wrote a famous letter to the Corinthians right around 96 AD.
But who was Clement?
In the Bible, Paul mentions a Clement in Philippians 4:3, calling him a fellow worker. Paul says that this Clement is part of Caesar's household.
And history tells us that Emperor Domitian had a cousin, a man named Titus Flavius Clemens.
It's the same man. The first pope wasn't a humble fisherman. He was a Roman royal. He was the cousin of the emperor.
This explains everything. It explains why the Roman Church had so much power so quickly. It wasn't a grassroots movement. It was the family business.
Yeah,
it's like a mafia.
The Flavian family destroyed the physical temple in Jerusalem through Titus, and then through Clement and Paul, they built a spiritual temple to replace it. A temple where you pay taxes to Rome, honor the emperor, and believe in a kingdom that is not in this world.
It was a perfect Flavian maneuver. They didn't just defeat the Jews on the battlefield, they defeated them theologically.
They stole their Messiah, and they turned him into a Roman god.
Yeah. Well, it's like everything. Like right now, these new ICE jails that they have, they're privately owned. They're literally going to take all these people, put them in that jail, not send them back to their country, because that you would think that's what would happen.
It could be easily done.
But no, they're going to keep them in this jail. That's private jails, which is a money-making scheme. I mean, it's disgusting, totally disgusting. But I think it's an hour.
I'm just glad that, we're able to share this information with you guys. You can do with it what you want. You can look it up in your Bible. You can cross-reference what we've said. We are not perfect. We know we make mistakes. We would admit it if we did make a mistake. But, so far what we found out is that this Saul of Tarsus,
Peter,
was literally a Roman agent, a spy sent by the Romans to destroy the message of the kingdom found within you in a way that it's still the repercussions of it, the Inquisition,
We're still living it.
the lies, and this system of original sin, this control that the church has over Western society.
Over
right
everything.
now.
I mean, and right now more so than ever. Right now they're trying to, like, we watched a series in Showtime, I forgot the name of it, but is that the Christians wanted to get into politics, so
Called The Family.
The Family, so they control everything. And we're seeing it. We're seeing exactly it all play out right in front of the stage called life. You know, it's evident. Totally evident.
You know, you have these people that, you have names that Paul traveled with, and they're all like Roman names and stuff, and you're like, wait a second,
Yeah.
what is it? You know, and why is this guy, if he's being imprisoned and he's going to be supposedly beheaded by Nero, he's living in a house with a Roman guard, and he gets to write his letters and have his scribes.
It's kind of like
'cause Paul
Maxine in
wasn't-
jail, you know, where she's like,
I mean, Paul wasn't like suffering.
No.
You know, he was like sitting in a house, you know, probably overlooking the Nero's palace or something. And, you know, he's getting his four square meals a day or something, and he probably gets to get a pet or something.
Yeah.
Just like
Maxine.
Just like Ghislaine.
Yeah.
And basically, you know, he lives in the lap of luxury. He's like, okay, I'm going to appeal to Rome now. I'm ready to go back to Rome. Okay. So they make it like he's like this suffering servant, and he literally is like living in, you know.
Yeah. So the perfect crime, the perfect plot, you know, and that changed, you know, the true belief system that got changed completely, you know.
Yeah, he literally like reformed and reshaped what the beginning like effort of like trying to teach a message of self-empowerment, of self-actualization, of understanding your divinity, of knowing who you are as an eternal spirit, not just as a physical body. I mean, that's not important, right? This isn't, the equation isn't, it doesn't equal 1 + 1 equals, you know, whatever physical existence and your money and your fame and your fortune. And
it's all trivial
you know,
stuff that in the scope of things, you live a blip of time here on earth, but your spirit is eternal. So, you know, it's like so petty. That's why whenever I read the Bible, I just saw the God of the Bible as a petty, small deity. It was like, this doesn't appear as a God at all to me.
yeah, I mean,
At all, ever. I mean, and I've read the Bible from beginning to end, and I've read it several times, and, you know, it's like, what is this? Is this supposed to be a God? No.
yeah, so small, so concerned with
The pettiest of things.
genitals.
I mean, it's just.
I mean, what we hear online, you know, it's the rhetoric is it's worse and worse every
Every time,
day,
yeah.
it seems like. And the attacks just don't come at male to female transsexuals, but also to female to male.
Oh, yeah.
And they keep telling Mark, like, you're never going to be a man.
You're still a
You're
girl.
always going to be a woman.
I'm like, hello,
you
I
know,
live my life.
it's like-
I mean, I go to gyms. I've used the sauna when we were in EOS every day, hung in my underwears with a bunch of guys. The guys looked at me like another guy. There was
like-
not even a thought process.
I mean, they're looking at him as an elder statesman, and they're like, you know, my girlfriend, she's like giving me a hard time because I want to like, it's like, and Mark's like the great like male,
Old-
you know, father time or something, telling people, you know, well, this is what you should do. And it's like, oh, wow. So maybe, are you going to be here next week? Maybe we have these conversations
I know,
at the
all
gym,
the time.
right? In
I'm
the
like,
sauna.
they say women talk, men talk a lot more than women.
They did at
Trust
that
me.
EOS,
Oh,
that's for
gosh,
sure.
yeah.
And the thing is, you know, we're doing a podcast with a guy back in 2018. He doesn't know anything about our story, and he interviews us, and then he's like looking up to Mark, literally like really admiring his masculine qualities, right? This is something that only men admire among men. And then he finds out later, and he's like, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
I mean, I see you in your essence and how you and it's like, I mean, it's like, and these people, they think that every trans person lives with this, like, oh, they're going to know that. They're going to out us. They're going to, you're living in fear or something. And it's like,
that's never been a thing with me at all.
No.
Not at all. But anyway, yeah.
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? That's the world
Just keep on keeping on. Move forward.
Yeah.
Don't look back.
Never.
And try to make a difference in the world. We do this podcast to try to make a difference in the world. If we can reach even just one person to tell them about that message of the kingdom within, that would be
You're not broken.
wonderful.
There's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect the way you are. You have been given a gift, and don't let any institution take that gift away from you.
You haven't fallen, and you aren't riddled with sin. You're not a dirty, person. You are royalty. You are eternal. You are incredible, and you are perfect just as you are.
Yeah. Definitely. All right, so no one's calling in, no one's saying anything else. I think that's all we got for tonight. We've almost been going for 2 hours. I hope that guy that was riding on the trailer that we put out,
Hope he watched some of this.
Yeah, and maybe get you to think a little bit,
And we hope that you guys have learned something from this, or it's caused you to maybe ask questions in a different way that you wouldn't have in the past.
Mm-hmm.
If you're deconstructing as a Christian and you're still trying to find evidence, and I encourage you to just keep on doing your research, keep on looking at all the evidence out there, look at all the options of, what this could be, what that could be, and make your decision based on what you find out, not what we tell you.
Or what anybody tells you. Don't just go with blind faith, because that is not going to get you anywhere, Anyway, guys, remember to subscribe, hit that notification button, share, and if you have any questions.
Have a good night.
And she says, have a good night. Good show again. Thank you so much, Valid. We appreciate you extremely. And thank you, Kinetic, for also watching and being part of the chat. We'll catch you guys next week, next Tuesday, with another, I'm sure it's going to be another amazing dive to things that make you go, because that's where it's all about. So if no other questions or stuff, we will leave you for tonight. Have a good weekend and be well. Love you guys, but remember to always love yourselves too. Good night.